Well, hello, good morning. It's Imogen here. Um, I'm here today to have a conversation with my friend, with my client, and also my co-teacher on a couple of courses, trauma awareness activist Shay Seaborne. And we wanted to do this video today to talk about the um, concept of compassionate witnessing, of what it means to be a compassionate witness. Um, it's a term that seems to be more common these days, that you might have seen referred to, banded around in articles and things, but might not be quite sure what it means and how it might be relevant to you or not. So we thought we'd talk about it because it turns out it's a very important thing to be able to do and offer another human being and receive. And it's something we've actually been discussing and working with quite a bit in an ongoing study group that I run. So it's been very important to the people in that group too. Anyway, welcome, Shay.
Thank you.
um, so why don't we just start with a working definition of compassionate witnessing? What is compassionate witnessing?
It's the ability to simply be with somebody, whatever their internal state is, whatever they're expressing, without making judgments or becoming distressed ourselves and having a distress reaction, but to be with them. And basically, it lets them know that their lived experience and what's happening inside them aren't too terrible, aren't too awful. They're they're awful, but they're okay enough for me to help you hold them just a little bit.
Mm, mm. So I think you actually touched into why this is so important for people. But I think it's important not only for the receiver, right? It's a two-way connection that is very rewarding. That's maybe not quite the right
Mm-hmm.
word, but very fulfilling, humanizing, meaningful. Um, what else would you say? Why is this so important?
The
Um,
benefits go both ways.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
um, some people might roll their eyes and go, "Oh, compassionate witnessing, that's work," um, and it drains me. Um, and there are times when you don't have the ability, but a lot of times when people can't be compassionate um, witnesses, it's because they don't understand what's going on or how to respond in a way that protects them from that being drained. It's basically recognizing that this person over here has their distress, and this is me over here, and what I'm feeling inside of me is my body's response to their distress. It's not their distress. This is my
Yeah,
sense of compassion
yeah.
coming up, and it might feel like distress initially. It might feel like your heart rate increases, your respiration increases. You might even feel queasy and maybe even a little sweaty, because part of compassion is feeling um, maybe angry at what happened, angry for that person, um,
Mm,
or sad for them. So it's going to spark those sensations in your body. And if you don't understand, this is a normal part of compassion and it's not something that's bad or scary or overwhelming, then you can um, recognize that and move away from that sensation rather than dwelling on, oh, now my stomach's upset, which makes it worse. You
yeah.
can focus on being with that person.
Mm.
You just have to remind
Um,
yourself, and that actually brings you that there's two parts of the compassion response. The first is the activation, and if that gets out of control, you can't use your prefrontal cortex to bring things back, and then it can, aggravate the other person's distress, and then you can get in a cycle of distress, and then you're like basically re-traumatizing each other. Just because you
Yeah.
don't understand what's happening in your body. You don't have the terms or the concepts, and when you do, it gives you the power to say, oh, that's that person, and here's what's happening, and you can then be free to be fully present with them, because it's not a scary thing that's going to end up janking you both up worse.
Yeah, I do think it's really helpful to have some understanding and skills at being present with yourself, of how to some extent, be able to calm your own nervous system
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't get this escalating um, uh, cycle that's not going to be helpful to either of you. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
you can be present enough with yourself to stay and be present to someone else, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's
You're not.
exactly where it
Mhm,
starts. You have to
mhm,
be able to be present with yourself and your own feelings. Um, and
mm,
if you can't be present with someone else and their feelings, then you need to work on your sense of safety yourself. Um, you have
yeah.
some trauma that's not resolved, and it's impeding your quality of life in ways you can't even imagine until you start finding new ways of being.
I'm reminded of Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion, but she has a definition within self-compassion of compassion itself, which she sees as having three components, which I think are relevant here. One is mindfulness, so that would help you be aware of yourself and what's you and what's not you, and how
Mhm.
to. The second is common humanity,
Mhm.
that we all suffer and that we're not alone. And I think in this compassionate witnessing relationship or experience, that you're helping people not be alone
Mhm.
in their suffering in those moments. And the third component is kindness,
Mhm. Yeah.
so I think that's
Yeah, that's a very nice overlay. Yeah, and that's
yeah.
that's the thing, that the person needs to feel like they're not alone. They need to feel like they're seen and heard and felt and believed, and that
Mm,
helps restore their sense of well-being. And this is uh, hardwired into us as mammals, as primates, as human beings. We need that reflection from
mm,
others, that we are here, that we're visible, that our selves and lived experience matter to someone else,
mm,
enough to be recognized and safe enough to be held. And when we share our distress, um, a, a very healthy neuropositive society, we would be sharing our distress in little bits throughout the day with each other and processing it normally, um, and we wouldn't have major trauma,
have a mhm,
and PTSD would be almost unheard of, because we would have the psychosocial support built into our environment that prevents PTSD from
mm,
occurring, um,
mm.
because we wouldn't be constantly stressed all the time. That makes us, and particular individuals especially, vulnerable to more traumatic experiences and to ending up with PTSD. Which I
Mm,
always have to say as a reminder, Dr. Ariel Schwartz says PTSD is never the fault of the individual. It's a failure of their environment. And the
mm,
failure is the psychosocial support before, during, and after the traumatic experience.
yeah, yeah. I think that's really important because, for many reasons, but you can blame yourself for something, and that's adding to the distress,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not your fault,
Yes,
basically. Yeah.
yes, and when other people don't
Mm,
understand trauma, and that the traumatic the trauma response is not about any choice, it's neurophysiological, it's not
mm,
logical. It happens in the
mm,
body, and it's the body's way of surviving, and you can't pick whether you run or collapse or fawn.
mhm,
It's what your body's doing to protect you. And when people don't understand that, they can be extremely judgmental, ourselves and toward each other. And that just reinforces the harm, that sense of unworthiness and that sense of being other and being defective.
So you alluded momentarily, or for a moment, that we can also perhaps be a compassionate witness to ourselves. That
Yes.
in some ways, obviously that's not the whole story, because it's extremely important from what you've just described to have this validation and acceptance, the interpersonal neurobiological support. But tell me a little bit about how we do this for ourselves.
Well, having the awareness, of course, and understanding your neurobiology, and having the ability to recognize the body sensations, what our body's telling us about our internal state. We have this information superhighway called the vagus nerve that runs from the head down through the viscera, and it brings tremendous amounts of information up. 80% of the information comes from the body to the brain. So it's giving our brain information about body temperature, heart rate, blood flow,
all sorts of things way under the conscious
yes,
levels.
Things that we're really glad we don't have to consciously manage. We couldn't possibly do it, but that information is still coming up to the brain, and that we can't consciously process it. Our body gives us signals. It tells us things. Like, you put your hand on something hot, your body jumps back, right?
You don't have to say, "Oh, yes, my hand is on the pan. I better move it."
It's your nervous system protecting you from harm. Same thing, whether you freeze or collapse or run or fawn or fight back. It's all automatic. The autonomic nervous system does this.
So it's just occurred to me that compassionate witnessing to yourself is basically self-compassion.
Yes. Yes. Even if you don't feel it. I would like to say about that. I think of it, for me, in terms of what I do when I'm having a flashback. That's when I can really feel some compassion for myself, ironically. Yes, if I have a flashback, like a full sensory flashback to some, horrific, life-threatening event from childhood, I can, as it's happening, also, because of all the practices I've done, be a witness to what's happening. And sometimes even, like, if I'm making a movement, I actually think about Pat Ogden and her work with somatosensory work, and I go, oh, this is a movement like she was talking about in that video. Maybe I need to slow it down and do it again, like she was talking about, so my nervous system can understand what's happening. And I can do that while I'm having a flashback. And that's how I integrate the traumatic memory with the present, because I'm in the present and yet fully experiencing this at a cognitive and somatic level.
That's actually amazing, and a lot of knowledge and practice and skills and discernment of what's going on are necessary. And that kind of, I want to bring it back to actually the compassionate witnessing we do for one another as the main thing that we're kind of talking about here. And you basically, I think, said there the three, we kind of came up with three key components that are needed to kind of be able to be a compassionate witness for someone in the best possible way, which is having a little bit of knowledge about what's going on. So I'll just say the three things that we came up with, and maybe you could say a little bit about each one. So we came up with knowledge, you have some skills. Actually, you've practiced some ways that you can mindfully look after yourself as you listen to others,
Mm-hmm.
and state that you're in a state yourself, which in which you have the capacity to do this, that
Mm-hmm.
you know enough to know that I am personally too activated, too dysregulated right now to be able to give this person what they need and look after myself and everything, and they
Mm-hmm.
won't, so
Yes,
anyway.
that's really important. All
Mm,
those. Mhm. Well, I think we covered the knowledge pretty well, having
yeah,
the basic understanding of what's
mm,
happening
mm,
and and how to protect yourself
mm,
and the other person, and why it's so valuable. The
mm,
benefits. When you understand the benefits, you just kind of want to do it all the time, especially once
mm,
you recognize the benefits at the cognitive and the experiential level.
mm.
It's just really, like I often say, it seems like magic, but it's interpersonal neurobiology.
Indeed.
um, I'm sorry, I lost
Skills.
my skills. Yes, having a mind body practice that helps you stay present in your body is really important, and also being able to recognize the signals. Um, a lot of people are so cut off they can't. So it takes
Mm,
a lot of practice, especially in tiny little bits, to get used to being in
mm,
your body if it's been unsafe.
mm,
Uh, and so that's a skill as well. And then also listening skills are really important, and learning how to reflect back to somebody. A lot of times it can be helpful to.
oh, we seem to have lost Shay for a moment. But I think she was talking about the listening skills. Are you back with us, Shay? Or maybe not. Um, the listening skills that we can reflect back to others and
Mhm.
show them some compassion, that we show that we care, and we see their suffering, we hear them, but we're not actually there to try and fix it. And yet it's really important for them to know that we would like to make it better for them if we could.
Mhm.
Um, um, yeah, sorry,
That's
you're back now. I was trying
yeah, that's a
to.
key component of the compassion is recognizing somebody's distress and the desire to do something to help,
Alleviate it.
yeah, to
Yeah.
alleviate it. Whether you do something or not, you're still
Mm,
you're doing
yeah.
something by just saying, "I'm sorry that happened to you, and I wish I could make things better." That
Mm,
actually helps change their nervous system a little bit. And if
yeah.
everybody around
Yeah.
them could do that from a
Mm,
heart.
mhm. Yeah, and without trying to manage that and take it over. I think we're going to do another video on compassionate witnessing, um, a little bit on the, you might call it the do's and don'ts, or where compassionate witnessing can go wrong is where we kind of like overload someone with advice, or kind of take over their cause and completely kind of undermine
Mhm.
what they were actually wanting or needing. And compassionate witnessing itself is simply, probably the most challenging, it's just simply being with someone in their suffering
Mhm.
and acknowledging it, and as you say, having the desire to want
Yeah.
to to change it, but you're not kind of running in with all your fix it
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah.
I'd like to say something about the challenge. It is the most challenging for a lot of people, but once you understand it and practice it, it actually is a lot easier. It is so much easier, energy wise, to be with somebody in their pain and share that with them and give them that witnessing and gain the two-way benefit of this than it is to stand on the sidelines and go, rah, 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 you need to do this and you should fix yourself there.
Mhm.
That doesn't help anybody. It just janks you both up worse. So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
actually easier, less effort to
It's
learn how to
easier,
do.
but it may not be our habitual way,
Mhm.
or the way we've practice subconsciously
Right.
being. We always want to, and our brains are, if I understand, we see a problem, and our brains are kind of designed to want to find the solution. And
Right.
so, but
And our
the
bodies are designed to connect and
Mhm.
resolve the problem that way.
So compassionate witnessing is about the connection part,
Mm-hmm.
and there can come a later part where you could ask someone how you might, is there any way that you could offer more tangible support, or would they like to hear you had an idea, would they like to
Mm-hmm.
hear it, and they may not want to, and then you have to be okay with that. So
Yes, that's part of the
yeah,
compassion is putting
yeah,
their needs
yeah,
above your desire
yeah,
to offer anything. Um,
yeah.
one of the wonderful things, many wonderful things about compassionate witnessing is when we do it and make a practice of it and are capable of it, it prevents us from dehumanizing each other.
Mm,
And we could all use a
mm.
lot of dehumanizing prevention these days.
Indeed, absolutely. Yes,
Also, it's
it
contagious.
requires us to see someone else as another human being who is suffering, another human being just like ourselves. Right? So, um, so it looks like Shay is having a few little internet blips here, but I think that's more or less the end of what we wanted to talk about today. Um, I the body intelligence practices and concepts that we teach in our courses and classes can really help with some of the things that enable you to to be a better compassionate witness. Obviously, not the only way, but it helps you see or be aware of your own personal boundaries, awareness of the space between you and another. So you're very present to them, but you're also very clear where you are. You have ways to calm your own nervous system that can help you stay with listening to difficult things, hearing difficult things. Helps you be more discerning, like we talked about, that you might notice I'm actually too dysregulated right now to be able to do this. And with that discernment, that means you don't get in a situation where you're actually unintentionally even harming someone because you're not in that state where you can be a compassionate witness. But hopefully, you know enough to say, to tell them, I can't right now, it's too much, but I'd love to come back and talk to you and listen, or whatever you want to say, maybe in 2 hours or tomorrow, or whatever you think might work better for you. um, um, yeah, so a lot of self-awareness is born out of the practices and concepts that we work with. You're back.
Oh,
um, Yeah. So next time we're going to do another video on compassionate witnessing, if this has been interesting to you. But we'll kind of get into kind of more practical um, uh, tips, if you like, on where we can go wrong, and what we can do to kind of stay on the path to being that that lovely witness for someone else. Anything else while you're here before we just finish up today?
I have a bunch of notes here. Let me see if there's anything. Oh, yes. This I thought this was really important. The concept of broaden and build. Um, when we have the ability to sense the suffering of others and desire to help, we can respond by the intention of to broaden and build connections, and that fosters relationships, which foster resilience for ourselves and each other and as a community.
Mm, mm. I'm thinking that being able to compassionately witness others and receive it creates such meaningful connections, and that's just going to be helpful to all humans to have more meaningful relationships and connections in their life.
It's
So,
actually real medicine.
yeah,
Those connections um, um, are integrative. They actually build fibers in the brain that integrate the brain. And that's a very important thing to have, an integrated brain. And the same neural pathways that do that help us be able to relate to each other well, and also even regulate our own nervous system. So if we lack those fibers because we lack that kind of safe connection, we have difficulty regulating our nervous system, which results in all sorts of terrible symptoms that I can tell you about in about 4 books if you want to know. It's awful. I highly recommend you don't end up like me. That's why I do this work.
Yeah, and I appreciate it so much. Just so anyone who's interested, the course that Shay and I co-teach together, Foundations of Regulation, it's a 4-week online course. We have the next one starting up on January 24th. And anyone who just wants a simple, effective way to calm your nervous system, I've got a couple of constructive rest sessions coming up for the kind of to help people deal with holiday stress, whether you celebrate the holidays or you want nothing to do with them. It can be a stressful time of year all around. So these are just half-hour sessions. Constructive rest is traditionally a way of lying down that's very supported. I do a kind of guided talk to help guide your awareness and your thinking in ways that will help calm your system. And you can do it sitting or standing, fully not standing for that length of time, but sitting or lying down, whatever position works for you is fine too. So next one's on Tuesday. So I'll put that information below the video. All right. Thank you so much for this conversation, Shay. And I am looking forward to part 2 very much. All right. If anyone has any questions, pop them in the comments and we'll get right back to you afterwards. So, all right. Thank you. And see you next time.